Right, so it's me, Sally Burdett, and Prof. JJ Tabani. We're with you until that cabinet reshuffle announcement. It's now due at 8 o'clock. At the 11th hour, we get the news that it's moved from 7 to 8 o'clock. But it's been a very busy news day, but a very significant story that does relate directly to the president. Let's go into that now. The South African Revenue Service revealing today that $580,000 brought into the country by Sudanese businessman Hazim Mustafa was apparently not declared. The Democratic Alliance obtained this information from SARS in terms of legislation which gives it the right to access such information. It's the PIA Act. Mustafa reportedly used the money to buy animals from President Ramaphosa's Phala farm. The money was then stolen from the game farm in February 2020, with former spy boss Arthur Fraser alleging the president ordered a cover-up. So let's get a legal understanding of the implications of this money seemingly not being declared. CEO at the South African Institute of Tax, Professor Keith Engel, joins us now. Prof, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. So Hazim Mustafa is on record saying that he did declare the money. It now seems there's no record of that. Which is problematic because it's a lot of money. It's not just like $100 US, it's $580,000 US. SARS cannot find any record of that at all. Does this automatically mean he was lying?
Well, I don't know about lying, but the question is, did he violate the law? So the real issue here is not SARS. The real issue here is the Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank is the one that's in charge of making sure you convert your rands into your foreign currency into rands quickly. So the general rule is this: the person that Mustafa, he's from Sudan, he is not subject to exchange control. The one who is subject to exchange control is the president. The president is a South African citizen and a resident. So when they get a hold of foreign currency, at least at that time, I believe, you had to convert it in 30 days. If you didn't convert it, you had to declare it and convert it. There are longer amounts for small amounts on travel, but large amounts need to be converted with 30 days, and exchange control violations are a criminal offense. So that's the real problem. It's not a SARS problem, it's a Reserve Bank problem.
Yeah. But do you think that they could bring another element that the president did not on that amount, in a sense, pay tax as well, so which makes it a double whammy in that there was exchange control violation, but also the taxation thing? Or could he get away with saying it was stolen before he could pay tax, and there was still within a window, since it was holidays, you know, there's still a window, maybe we're still going to declare in March or the end of a financial year? What do you think?
Well, Professor, I'm very impressed with that. I think, look, there's the first point. There's a clear violation of exchange control. And that is, you have to convert your foreign currency to rands. That's black and white, period. It's that simple. Yeah. The second issue, which I fully agree with you, is, did you declare this as part of your revenue? So when it comes to declaring your revenue, well, that can be however you receive it. You can receive it in cash or otherwise, but you need to declare the money. If you don't declare that money and you've underdeclared, that's also an underdeclaration. That's tax evasion. That becomes a SARS problem. Now, that's not going to be proven by the fact that they just sat on the money underneath the couch or by whatever furniture you put it in. The point is, in order to make that as a problem, what you would have to do is look at the actual tax return. And you'd have to see all the monies that he's declared and whether that was included. And that would take a much more complex calculation. Now, we haven't seen those returns, and maybe that's what the DA would want to see, is what those returns are. And now we're back to our former president. Does other people have a right to see your tax returns because you're the president of the country?
Yeah, and we saw that with Jacob Zuma, that SARS was absolutely adamant that this information shouldn't be made public. So I wonder if you could just dial back a little bit and explain then to me what information was released from SARS, because SARS responded to this PIA Act, this application made by the DA. They said, no, we have no record of this money, but you say it's actually a SARS issue. It's actually a Reserve Bank issue. So could we still find that perhaps this money was somehow declared to the Reserve Bank? I mean, I'm just a little confused about the processes and why SARS is responding on this, but obviously would be very reluctant to talk about anyone's private tax returns?
Yeah, well, the SARS didn't show the tax returns. So they only showed whether they have any record of something being declared. But it is a very odd thing. Whether somebody brings money into the country and converts it, generally is not a reserve. It's not a South African Reserve Service issue. It is really a Reserve Bank issue. And so you do see change the rules recently on travelers. Now SARS has added that to their quiver, but that's only been very, very recent. So the thing that they said is, well, we have no records of it being declared. Well, typically they wouldn't have records, even if it was declared, unless they got that from the authorized dealers. So that's not, SARS is about declaring returns. So I don't know why SARS, maybe they should have said that or not, but that's not something for them to report. It's not something they would receive in any event, no matter who you did or what you did. It's really a Reserve Bank issue, and the information should, the request should have been to the Reserve Bank. Now, one of the problems that we're having is that we think SARS is the answer to everything in this country, and SARS is not. SARS is in charge. Did you pay your taxable income? So the issue isn't whether they kept the money or not kept the money, but the fear that we really have, which is really the real crime here, is if they take money and you put it under the mattress. People who put money under the mattress or in the furniture typically don't declare the cash to SARS. That's the problem.
Okay, Sorry to butt in. I'm going to actually read from the release from SARS. It says the SARS information officer, after an extensive search for the record in various SARS passenger processing systems and engagements with the relevant business units within SARS, which he believed may be in custody of and or be in possession of or knowledge of the records requested, was advised the record could not be found or may not be in existence. And then obviously the SARS information officer explained that to Mr. Steenhuisen. SARS is not in possession of said record. So does that back up exactly what you've been explaining to us?
I think it does. Now, I think the one issue that we're getting into, I'm not quite as familiar, there's a customs declaration form. So there might be a declaration form, even though I think it's changed now, it's gotten a lot tighter about what you bring into the country. But usually what we're talking about when it comes to customs is import duties. Now, import duties are something very different. So when you have an import duty, it's typically importing cars and other things. I don't believe there's an import duty on cash. That I've never heard of. That's more of a Reserve Bank issue. But what you might have done is if you check the plane records when somebody comes in, did they make a declaration? And there is probably a declaration form there. But it's not really a critical issue for SARS again. That would be more for the Reserve Bank. But yes, maybe there's a declaration that should have been declared there, and that would be a customs import violation on the declaration form. And that would be for the foreigner.
So, Prof, you think maybe the DA should have directed its query to the Reserve Bank for the answer to be detrimental to this case of Ramaphosa's explanation, so to speak?
Yeah, no, I think it should have been directed to the Reserve Bank. I think that's really the right place. Now, what is interesting here, as to the media statement, because I'm sorry I didn't see that, is that typically what people are going for is the tax return, the income tax return. Now, again, if SARS has a duty of confidentiality, well, the tax return is completely protected. The issue might be they don't have the same declaration for customs, but I would have thought they would have claimed the same thing. So it's a little bit funny, but maybe the rules of secrecy for declarations on forms on customs is slightly different. But the real abuse, honestly, is it's really an abuse. What do we really care about at the end of the day? You know, let's say you brought money in cash and you put it under your mattress. Who is harmed? Nobody is harmed. The only harm that happens is if there was a tax violation that you didn't declare the income, because people who receive money in cash often don't declare it and they don't pay their fair share of tax. The second issue, which is really outside of Reserve Bank and outside customs or SARS, or whatever you want to say, is really, did that money get obtained illegally? Typically, cash has got something else going on, and there's another violation there.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the thing, is we have recently, as a country, been graylisted, which means that there are still, even though we've changed some laws, there's still enough questions around money flows into our country, the source of those money flows, and whether we might have inadvertently funded terrorist organizations. You know, I mean, as you're explaining it to me, my brain is like working overtime to try and understand who does what and where and how. Obviously, you know, this is exactly the sort of stuff that needs to be, you know, that doesn't do our reputation any good. Am I right?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, look, how can that do good, especially around the graylisting? Now, again, let's just talk about the Treasury family, because that's what's confusing here. There's Treasury. Treasury just sets policy. Then there's SARS. SARS collects the revenue. Did you pay your fair share? The Reserve Bank has many functions around making sure interest rates and all of that, but they also have a very important function of maintaining the currency. And the currency, the big issue has always been, we don't want you holding on to foreign currency. We want you to convert money into rand in order to keep the rand propped up. So that's that group. Now you're getting to the graylisting. The graylisting is about the FIC, the Financial Intelligence Center. That's where it starts. And that's about money laundering. Now, the money laundering issue is not typically where the Americans are coming from, is much more on drugs, and they're coming much more on terrorism. So that's what that's all about. And there, one of the things they're always watching is you have to report the money flow because we don't trust the source. If it's from cash, it's an unknown source. So if you put a lot of money into a bank, cash, the bank has to account for what's the origin. And that's really the question. When you get a lot of cash, what is the origin? Was the origin legal? Was that for the animal that was supposedly purchased? Or was it some sort of other thing that can't be explained that might be another illegal violation? That's where the real issue might lie, which is really outside of Reserve Bank and outside of SARS.
Prof, I want your perspective on this. Obviously, there's always, and the reason the tax returns are confidential is because SARS has a discretion once you have either missed your deadline or whatever, to either give you a fine, make an arrangement, come to some sort of agreement that does not always result in jail or even a criminal record or anything like that. Now, when you listen to this whole mess with the president and so on, right, other than political filibustering and trying to kick the can down the road and so on, what do you think can be done within the law to solve this thing once and for all? Should the president just come out, accept what has happened, make an arrangement with SARS, and the thing is over, like any other citizen can be able to approach SARS if they have erred where their taxes are concerned?
You know, this would be a good one. Look, from a SARS point of view, you can make a compromise, or you can come forward and accept the fine. And violating SARS law as a general matter is not a criminal violation. So coming before SARS, paying the full amount with the penalties, or even maybe going through a VDP, although this one may be hard because SARS knows too much beforehand, is that you might have an issue that you're going to, but you probably won't have a criminal issue if he comes forward. The problem that he really has is a Reserve Bank issue, because the Reserve Bank issue is one in which that's where you need to take and to convert the money. And there it is a criminal violation. But again, maybe if he came forward to the Reserve Bank and then they would negotiate something and keep them out of a criminal violation would be the way to go. Because the problem is once he's got a criminal charge against him, he needs to step aside, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Prof. Keith Engel, thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. Absolutely fascinating. And to quote you, JJ, it's a mess.
A terrible one.
It's a mess. That was Professor Keith Engel, CEO of the South African Institute of Tax. Plenty more still to come, of course.